I'm very pleased to say that the Environment Secretary, George Eustice, joins us in the studio. Minister, lovely to see you this morning. I suppose one has to ask, after what we were hearing in James' report there, how concerned is the British government about the behaviour of the US President right now?
Well, look, we think that the statistics are very clear that Joe Biden has won. That's what the position is. But it's this is a US election, and if Trump's got concerns about the way it was done, it's for him to consider if there are legal options. We're not going to interfere in that. It's not our job to.
You have to concede, though, it doesn't look great, and I understand that you perhaps won't go as far as your colleague Sajid Javid, but his claim that this is adolescent behaviour does seem to have a point.
Well, look, I'm not a returning officer in the US election. I don't know exactly what happened there. If there were issues, then obviously those engaged in that election have got a right to look at that and take that up. But the Prime Minister's already, welcomed Joe Biden to the post, issued a statement, as have leaders around the world. It does look pretty clear that Joe Biden's won this election now. He's crossed that threshold of 270 electoral college votes and appears to be the next US president.
We move on to potential problems that we might have with a Biden administration in a second, but there does appear to be something of an opportunity, an opening, particularly for your department, with Joe Biden really pushing on this Green New Deal and we here in the UK trying to reposition ourselves as a leader in green tech.
Yes, I mean, obviously it'll be a different administration with a different focus in many areas, but I think it's fair to say on the environmental front, the Biden camp have been quite clear that they're going to rejoin the Paris COP agreement and take a leading role in tackling climate change. And I think that's a really important opportunity for us. We're hosting COP26 next October in the UK, a big year on biodiversity as well next year. And I think that this administration has already signalled it's going to be much more engaged in some of those international fora for the environment.
Almost feels like you're suggesting that US leadership on environmental issues has been missing for a few years.
Well, look, the Trump administration took a particular view, and on these matters, it's no secret that we're not enthusiastic about multilateral global agreements on issues like the environment. Indeed, they withdrew from some of those conventions. So they had a very clear stance on that. The Biden camp suggesting a very different approach. And I think that's probably right and consistent with what the UK wants to see on the environment.
Let's talk about where there may well be problems. And it certainly seems to be the case. Joe Biden has made it very clear that he will not accept any undermining of the Good Friday Agreement. We know that the Internal Markets Bill is going through the Lords today. If various clauses are taken out by the Lords, will the government reinstate them straight away?
Well, we will, because the UK Internal Markets Bill is not about undermining the Belfast Agreement. It's about standing behind it and making sure that it works and looking after, the interests of Northern Ireland, making sure that the peace and stability that's been hard won there can carry on. And so the limited number of areas where we took a power, subject to Parliament agreeing it, to be able to create legal clarity and legal certainty, should there be areas at the joint committee process in the our negotiations with the EU, if there are areas they can't agree, we've got to provide that legal certainty and legal clarity, and that's all the bill does.
In terms of the deal being struck with the European Union, exactly where are we, and how much are we now, apparently, given words that we heard from the government over the weekend, willing to concede on the matter of fishing?
Well, look, the negotiation has been going on now for, obviously, many, many months. They resume again this week. I understand that there are still differences. There are still some obstacles to overcome. But I think there's now, some goodwill on both sides to try to progress things. A lot of work going into that. David Frost and the negotiating team for the UK working very hard to try to get an agreement. And on fisheries, look, we've always been open to doing a sensible approach, looking potentially at agreements that might span a couple or 3 years, for instance. We're going to be sensible in how we approach this, but making sure that we have control of our own waters again and control access to our waters has always been a red line for us in these negotiations.
It doesn't feel, though, that you're steering me away from the idea that we may well be prepared to give ground on what to me has throughout this appeared like a fairly obvious red line. Our waters, our fish.
Well, we're not giving ground on that. I mean, when you leave the European Union, you do do become an independent coastal state, you control access in your exclusive economic zone, that's out to 200 miles or the halfway point. That's what Norway and Faroes and every other country in the world actually has. It's just a simple feature of international law. So that's a point of international law rather than a matter for negotiation. The issue will become how much, what are the sharing arrangements, how much mutual access do we allow in one another's waters? And that's obviously a discussion that'll happen annually, but there may also be a partnership agreement that sets out the ground rules as to how we will work on that. And we've certainly published that and put proposals to the EU.
On your brief, Minister, two topics that I never thought would coexist in the one place. COVID-19 and Danish minks. Tell us exactly what is going on at the moment, because there is a mass cull ongoing in Denmark. We have seen, essentially, the walls being put up between transport between there and here. Is there anything that we need to be concerned about?
Well, look, we don't have mink farming in this country. It was banned in 2002, and rightly so. But some countries in the world, including in the US, but also Denmark and the Netherlands as well, do still allow mink farming. And we know that mink come from a family of animals, the mustelids, that are quite susceptible to COVID-19, indeed so much so that they're sometimes used for experiments in this area to understand the virus. And there has been a new strain that has emerged in Denmark, and we think may also be in the Netherlands as well, but certainly clear in the Denmark.
Was it wise then for the travel ban to be announced at 1:30 in the morning and brought in at 3:30? It does always feel the government's characterisation of this as a whack-a-mole strategy sometimes is absolutely on the mark.
Well, I think, look, we're responding to, evolving evidence and emerging events. This is a fast-moving virus. What we realised at the end of, last week is that there had been a new strain of the virus that had developed in Denmark, and crucially, that had then reinfected a human from a mink. That was a significant new development, and we felt it was important to act expeditiously and quickly to try to make sure that there wasn't a risk of that coming to the UK, and that's all we've done.
Can we talk briefly about Kate Bingham and her role on the COVID task force? £670,000 of taxpayers' money has been signed off for use on a team of 8 PR consultants. 8 PR consultants who could have each pointed out that spending 675 grand on PR consultants might not be the best idea. What is going on with Ms Bingham at the moment?
Well, look, I'm not involved in that. Obviously, Matt Hancock, who's in the Department for Health, will be monitoring all of the work that they do. I don't know whether it was strictly PR consultants or whether it was management consultants more generally. As you know, Neil, I used to work in that industry, but also as press secretary David Cameron. Yeah. And so, generally, I think these resources can come from in-house. But I don't know the specific circumstances of those particular contracts.
But as you say, your political antenna must surely have been vibrating when you read about that, in much the same way as when you read about Marcus Rashford and his campaign to bring back free school meals. Just explain this one to me, particularly on the Marcus Rashford point. Why did the government expend so much political capital on a battle that they were clearly never going to win? On the one hand, in one corner, you've got Boris Johnson. In the other, you've got Marcus Rashford and poor, hungry children. Now, you may well argue that there is a point to be made, a debate to be had about provision outside of term time. But the time to have that debate is surely not in the middle of a viral pandemic.
Well, look, what we said at the time, and indeed I think last time I was on this programme, I explained that the government didn't think that the free school meals voucher scheme was the right way to go, because that should be offered in term time. But there were other areas that were under review. And we mentioned, for instance, the 63 million fund that we had for local authorities. We mentioned that we were open to extending that and increasing that and looking at other ways of tackling this problem. And
yeah,
that's what
you and your colleagues were out in front of the cameras. You know this. We're out in the cameras defending a decision that you probably all expected was going to, if not a U-turn performed on it, because the scheme that has been announced is different to what has happened before, but it would look pretty much like a U-turn.
Well, things can be presented that way, but I know, and I was involved in the discussion at the time, that a decision was made by government that free school meals wasn't the right way to go, but that there were other things that we could and should do in this space. Those have been worked on and developed and have been announced over the weekend. So this is actually not a U-turn, it's a consistent approach, consistent with what we said at the time, that there were other ways that we ought to intervene to help those in food poverty, and that's what we've done.
And it's a scheme that will last all the way till the end of next year. What about the year after that?
Well, look, you take 1 year at a time on some of these things, but and these are obviously, we refine things based on how they work. But the Winter Grant Fund runs until March, provides £170 million to local authorities, and then from next spring, during the Easter, summer, and Christmas holidays next year, there's going to be increased funding for the holiday activities and food scheme, which is all about supporting young people during those holiday times, run by local authorities, and very much focused on getting to people to understand food, change the culture of people's relationship with food, and to prepare food.
George Eustice, always good to see you. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.